Well, I've got some good news, some really encouraging news, and I've got some deeply troubling news. I've done a couple of videos. This is the third and probably last in this particular series, and I'll talk about some other things I'm going to be doing a little bit later as it relates to this. But I kind of was a little bit strategic in the evolution of these, except for this one right here. I didn't know where this one was going to take me. And that is, I did a video basically saying music is dead, okay? Music is dead. It's gone. It's buried. It's 6 feet under. It's over. The torch has been passed, and not only has it not been passed, it has put out. Now, that's a dramatization of the whole thing. Now, I knew when I started getting comments, I knew I'd get a ton of comments agreeing with me, and I knew I'd get some comments disagreeing with me. And they fell under the stereotypical lines of folks that are probably over the age of 40, kind of probably seeing music is dead for the most part. Not everybody, but generally that's the consensus, at least on that particular video, because I do have metrics telling me that. And then ultimately, then we've got the side that's saying, no, you're just wrong. You're flat out wrong. You just don't know how. And so then, okay, all right, so I want to be encouraged here. So I do the second video, knowing that there really is good music out there, because it all started with my 20-year-old son, a conversation that we had, and I knew it was out there, but I knew you just had to find it. And so I did a video basically saying, okay, if music is not dead, prove me wrong. Give me some examples of some artists today that are blowing your mind that you think could turn out to be very successful. And of course, I got the naysayers of people who just want to whine and cry. But outside of that, I got a lot of really great feedback and a lot of really great names of artists to check out. One probably, I don't know, I almost feel like they kind of all jumped on the bandwagon to get that name out there, which I strongly encourage that, and I support that. But it's a band called The Warning out of Mexico. It's 3 girls who do a more heavier, edgier tone, definitely some low-end focus stuff, but it's some rock and stuff, and it's pretty darn good. So I encourage you to check that out. Got recommendations across the gamut, every possible style, format, and even some genres that I didn't even know were genres, obviously. And I do expect that. The younger generation is going to come up with their own particular names of things, just like we did when we were younger. But there's a lot out there. And so when I started diving into this, I would start listening to some of these names, and I would start going to it, and I found like, man, there really is a lot of really great music out there. So why isn't it being heard? And why not? It's obviously being heard, but why is it not being heard by a lot of people? And then I've spent the last probably 3 or 4 days really thinking about this intently. And I think I've come to kind of a very discouraging opinion. I hate to be negative, and I definitely want to be proven wrong on this one without a doubt, because I'm never going to give up creating music. I'm going to take a guitar in my coffin with me when I go. But I believe that there's tons of people out there making wonderful music. However, the paradigm has changed dramatically, and I'm going to make a case for why I don't think that is in a lot of people's best interest. When you want to think about historically, through the modern age of popular music, now I'm really let's start in the 60s, okay, and go on through today. Really, at the end of the day, it was the record companies who decided what you were going to hear. Obviously, it was the record companies, and then of course, the radio DJs and everything. They had a lot of control, and those guys were in each other's pockets. So there was kind of a conspiracy theory going around. And ultimately, the record companies wanted to be able to do what? They want to sell music at the expense of the artist. But let's don't get into that. We all know how they kind of raped and pillaged all the artists throughout the history of time, which is criminal in of itself. Those guys should all be locked up and spend eternity in jail as far as I'm concerned. However, it is what it is. And so, but ultimately they were deciding on who was going to be it by who they supported. And so if you take any particular genre, now there's always some exceptions to this, but look at this open-mindedly for a second. Take any particular genre throughout the course of time. You really only had about 10 or 12 names of a band in any particular genre for the most part. Now, I'm just guessing at that number. I don't have any stats to back that up. But you really only had 10 to 12 bands out there that everyone, the majority of your friends knew who they were, right? And so they kind of moved up and down and up and down and up and down. You had some come in with like a fire breather and really make a name for themselves, but they They had spent probably 10 years writing all those songs for that first recording, that first album. And then they ran out of gas for the rest of it for a multitude of reasons. And so they didn't stay there very long. But the ones, there was really only that many in any particular genre that were real successful as far as popularity is concerned. But that was being controlled. We were being allowed to hear that. Not that it wasn't out there. We were being allowed to hear that. Ask yourself, how much has that really changed? Let's talk about what's going on with artists today. Well, I would argue they're being raped and pillaged on a scale never seen before, nothing like the record companies by Apple Music and Spotify and the likes. They are totally being robbed blind. And of course, what are the algorithms doing for Apple Music and Spotify? What are they doing? Well, they're putting music in front of you that they want you to listen to. They're adding songs to their recommended playlist that they think you want to listen to. And if you think they're doing that for your benefit, you're wrong. I'm not saying that some of those recommendations don't often lead you to music you ordinarily would not listen to, but you're being controlled by that algorithm as far as what is pushed. And that's why you see all of the let's call it the mainstream, the mainstream artists out there today. Those are all the ones. Are they necessarily the greatest? Well, they weren't necessarily the greatest throughout history. So let's mark that off, right? There was some good and some bad. There was some talented and some not so talented throughout all particular decades of music, really going back to the 60s. I ask myself sometimes, why is it that a lot of these artists seem to get the same continuous volume of streams over and over and over, when many of us, including every feedback that I've gotten in the comments below, the feedback from my kids, I've got 18-year-olds and a 20-year-old, and I've got a 30-year-old, and I've even got a 40-year-old. Okay, I've got them across the gamut. I get in tune with a lot of, and I understand that's a selective target group there, and I get that. But as far as the feedback I get on this channel, most real people out there are not paying attention to all that stuff that's popular. Only the ones that want to get on the bandwagon. That wagon's wigging out. That's why it's a bandwagon, because it's wagging its tail. I don't even know where I'm going with that garbage, but sometimes you just got to bear with my nonsense. But is this process better? Yes, there's so much really great music out there. But ask yourself this one important question. And those of you who've played in a band and have really had hopes and dreams of making it in the music industry, whether you're behind the microphone or in front of the microphone, regardless, we're all kind of captivated in this whole journey together, and we want to contribute what we can to it. How much of your blood, sweat, and tears did you pour into it? For many, a lot. A lot of sacrifices are made. A lot of sacrifices, unfortunately, with family, with friends, with lifestyle, living, basically hand to mouth half the time, trying to do the best you can to get your music heard and get it out there. And there's a lot of suffering that goes along with that. And overwhelmingly, the vast majority throughout time have never made it, and it's survival of the fittest to a certain degree, or survival of the most talented and the fittest. Persistence always usually played out the game as far as those who ended up being successful. Yes, the fact there is a tremendous amount of music out there and a tremendous amount of great music, eventually over time, do you ever wonder if that's just going to start to diminish? Because, most of us start out pursuing this as a passion. But what if I'm winding up 35 years old and I'm still pursuing that as a passion, and I've got a wife and kids, and we're barely scraping by? When exactly, if this doesn't work out for me, am I going to be able to get caught up and be able to provide a good life for my family? At what point does that happen? Or do you end up losing that family? And of course, your kid and your wife suffers because of your desire to do that. That is not healthy. It's just not healthy. And I don't know how long that's going to last unless the paradigm changes, but I don't see the paradigm changing. I only see it getting worse. And, especially when you start talking AI music and all that in there, oftentimes a high percentage of the population, they're like sheep. They're just going to go wherever everyone else goes, no matter what the subject. In this subject, it's music. They're just going to go with the sheep because everybody wants to go along to get along. But yes, you've got a very significant percentage, especially of the younger generation, who are constantly seeking out music. Are you just going to ultimately get used to the fact that you get to explore and experiment with a band for maybe 2 or 3 years and then they're no more and you just move on to the next? You got to ask yourself, if you still want that music coming, there has to be something in it for the people putting their hard work and hard effort into it. Because for those of you that don't know anything about this side of how it all works, tons of sacrifices are made. You give up a lot. And it's not just going out and playing a 2-hour show and that's the end of it. No, it's figuring out where you're going to stay tonight, how you're going to get enough gas to get to the next gig. Is your vehicle going to break down along the way, and what happens if it does? It's playing places that have never heard your music and just being booed and whatever, all the various things out there. I think those all make people stronger. But how long are you likely to do that? How long? That's what I wonder. I wonder, are we going to see a revolving door and then everyone finally realizes, what's the point of putting in the effort if there's no return on my investment? And so that's where I worry about this going in the future. But for those of you who think, especially those of you who are in the older generation, if you think great music is not out there, well, I've come to learn that it truly is. You just can't find it in the traditional avenues that we've always found it in the past. It's not going to be that way and hasn't been that way for some time. You know, I strongly encourage you to have some conversation. Younger people say, hey, how do you find music? Where are you going to find it? What types of things or types of searches are you finding to find this music? Because it is out there. It is out there. And that has been made evidently clear to me. Music has not died. I worry that it's changed so much that, I'm just concerned about that. I'm just concerned about it. I don't really know what that means at this point. I really don't. I don't know what that means. Now, I talked before about a lot of the bands. Obviously, to try to do that, I'm going to do some shorts. A lot of these bands that have repeat comments and stuff, I'm going to start creating some shorts over and over and over, just exposing everybody out there that watch this particular channel to things that have been recommended to me. And so I'll actually play things that I might not necessarily like, but if other people like it, then I want people to hear it. And so if we can certainly find a way to do that and maybe create another avenue for this process, that would be killer too. And noticing I want to note all the work I'll be doing that will be for nothing because I'm going to have to play some of this music. So it doesn't mean I'm going to get, so in other words, I'm not going to get monetized for any of those videos. And lastly, speaking of monetization, if you ultimately need to buy any music gear whatsoever, one of the ways that you can support this channel and the work that I put into it is there's affiliates down below to Sweetwater. This is not, Sweetwater's not a sponsor of this channel. They have never sponsored a single video. I just, bottom line is, hey, if you use that link, I get a small cut. I get a small percentage of it. And it's really the thing that helps this thing grow. Buy from whoever you want. If you don't want it to be Sweetwater, go somewhere else. I just don't have a link for that. But if you are in Sweetwater, please go down and just use that link, whether you're spending $20 on a cable or $20,000 on blah, blah, blah. I don't know. But whatever you buy with it, I hope it helps you make some music. So I'd appreciate you do it. That's down in the description below. Notice I'm kind of a woodworker and some really cool things here. For some of you that maybe aren't musicians and stuff, there's some really cool hidden things in this particular gym right here that you maybe haven't seen before. But I kind of was playing around with my CNC machine and I created this out of some resin, some things like that. I know you guys have probably been checking that out. More to come on all of this a little bit later. I'm a huge fan of soft tube, and so you're going to have to stay tuned on that. But until next time, hope every single one of you have a great day. Bye-bye.